everyone, and welcome to Bassman Studio. This is the second part of a three-part series where I copy Botticelli's Birth of Venus. So in this part, we're going to start adding color and what we call blocking in painting. So it should be a lot of fun. And if you saw the first part is where I did the underpainting. That's what we call the so-called drawing before we add color. So it is a monochromatic underdrawing for the painting that we're about to add color to. So you'll see that as well. So thanks for watching. Sit back and relax, and let's start this new video from Bassman Studio. Now that we've finished the underpainting, we're going to start with color, which I'm very excited about. So I'm going to start with the background, the sky in Birth of Venus, and work my way forward, as usually is the process for academic painting and for the videos I've been showing on my channel. It's always important to start with the background forward, that way you pull the figures forward in your composition. So let's begin. I'm very excited about painting color. It should be a lot of fun. And as you can see, I'm starting with, as usual, the background. So this is what we call blocking in. So I'm just blocking in the basic color of the background, pushing the paint into the canvas. So I'm working, as I said, back to front. And you can see it's starting to pull the figure out from the background. And I'm just covering as much of the background as I possibly can. With no detail, of course, even on the left-hand side. Just want to cover again as much as you can with the background before moving on to the second part of the painting. As you can see, it's starting to pull out from the background. So you can see a little bit of sky on the left-hand side. Not much, but enough where you just want to put it in. We could always go back and add details later. But if you can hear that sound, that's the sound of me pushing the paint into the canvas. So you don't want to be too gentle. Now, the second largest area of the painting is the water. Now, the water is actually slightly darker than the sky in the painting. So remember, when you're painting something, you want to ask yourself, what's lighter, what's darker, and to what degree? How much darker is it than the sky? How much lighter is the sky compared to the water? It's almost like a mathematical equation. You're just measuring what's lighter and what's darker. So again, working and putting in big, large areas of color. Just the large masses you could see. And of course, later on we could go back and add, of course, the shadow and the detail, but that's for the next video. So as you can see, I have most of the water painted in, and now I can move on to the next large object, which now I could choose. So now a part I've been looking forward to is Venus herself to paint. So I'm going to start with fairly light flesh tone. I mixed white, yellow, and a little bit of red to get this kind of like flesh tone that I see in the actual painting. So again, there's no features. I'm not painting any skin, like any eyes, nose, and mouth yet. Things are going to remain very loose and blocked in. But the aim of this is just to put in what we call the local color, the mid-tone of the painting. So there aren't any very light lights or dark darks yet, until later on. So the purpose of this is to put in a very broad manner, the basic flesh tones of the painting. So remember, you're trying to imitate someone's style in a sense. So right now I am imitating, or at least doing my best to imitate, Botticelli's style. So since I'm focused on Venus, I could even start painting in seashell, which is slightly lighter than her skin tone, and on a yellowish, sort of a yellowish color. And I'm just going to broadly paint that in, just to give a sense of place. Now I'm not using a lot of medium, meaning that I'm not thinning the paint out too much. I'm using pretty much mostly pigment right now, and I'm just pushing the pigment into the canvas. As I said before, later on we could start putting in the darks, the middle tone, etc., but not right now. Right now we're just putting in the broad areas, basically. So now I could concentrate on one of the figures on the right, and I'm just going to loosely put in the reddish color in what she's wearing, which is a beautiful reddish, almost crimson, but it's going to put in the local color right now, right here. And we could focus on, let's say, her hair. So I'm just mixing a reddish, yellowish color for her hair, and adding just a little bit of cadmium yellow. So you can see, you could almost see the painting on my palette. That's what you want. You want to actually see your painting on your palette. I know that sounds a little strange, but the painting starts here. Start adding the color of her hair in a rudimentary, quick way. And again, I'm just pushing the paint around. So the same thing is to be said for Venus's hair, which we will paint in right now, and it's beautiful yellowish color. So we're just going to add that in. And you can see it's very wavy and blowing everywhere in the wind. So we're just going to paint it as we see it. Again, not worrying too much about detail yet. Now I could also start painting in the figure on the right, her clothing. So I'm just going to do that again very quickly. Again, just blocking in what I see. The important thing is that we just put in large areas of color in this stage. You want to let go a little bit. You want to be very loose about it, very free, very open. Don't worry about putting in any features on any faces at this point. This is just the large areas of color. Now we're going to go to the figures on the left, and again, same principle where we just put in large masses of color. And again, it may not look like anything very realistic, let's say, yet, but it will be. So what we want to do is we just want to put in, as I said, the large masses of color. So you can see I'm just going around and I'm looking at where light is hitting these figures. And I could see light hitting the figures coming from the right-hand side of the painting. Now I could also start painting the upper part of the right-hand side. And that's fairly darker. It's a cluster of trees. And we're just going to go around it. And just paint in the big areas, as I mentioned, just to have a difference between tonality, between the background and the figure in the front. So again, this is a very physical thing to do. It's very, when you paint large, you have to throw your body into it. So now we're going to start with the shadows. And this is pretty much like the third stage of this painting. So I'm very much looking forward to it. And this is where we start to get volume and a sense of three-dimensionality in the painting. So now I'm going to start adding shadows on Venus herself and some of the figures. And before we do detail, we have to put in the shadows. So you can see I'm avoiding detail as much as possible till the very end. As much as I'm looking forward to painting in this beautiful detail of Botticelli's Birth of Venus, I know that I have to put in the shadows first. So we're still keeping it very simple. So now we're going to start adding shadow to the painting. So you can see I pretty much avoided doing shadows right now. So that's the next stage of this painting. So right now I'm avoiding detail as much as possible as usual. And as much as I want to paint the beautiful detail in Botticelli's Birth of Venus, I know that I have to keep it simple and first do shadows. So this is pretty much like the third stage of this painting until we actually add detail. So now I'm going to start adding the shadow on on Venus. You can see I used a really cool tone, and by cool I mean I added some blue to it to make it kind of recede in the distance. And blue is the darkest color in the spectrum. So whenever you want to make a color darker and make it recede, you add blue. And Botticelli's shadows on Venus are very soft, not very harsh. And as you can see, the light's coming from the right side. So it's hitting her on the left side. So I'm just putting in all the basic shadows, and you can see she's already kind of turning, basically. So I can see a little bit of shadow here on the bicep and on the forearm and the legs and feet, especially on her calf. And lastly here on her face, which is going to make her face turn a bit more. You can see the shadows I'm painting are very thin. They're not thick, so it's kind of transparent shadows. So you can see it's starting to turn a little bit more, which is what we want. And that's just the beginning of shadows. There's plenty of shadows everywhere, but this is just the beginning of shadows. And the shadow even here on her stomach. It's very faint. So if I wanted to, when I want to, I'm going to go back and soften these a little bit more and blend them a little bit more. But the main thing is that we put in the major shadows first. So now I'm mixing the color for the seashell. And so I added a bit of this beautiful Mars yellow that I have. And again, this is obviously not Botticelli's palette, but what I'm doing is getting the right tone and value. So it creates this beautiful, rich golden color. Which is very dark. But I am putting a lot of medium, so making it very transparent as they are shadows. So now I'm adding the shadows on the seashell just to give it a bit more volume. And you can see I'm still keeping it rather simple and loose. So the object is just to show where the light is coming from at this stage. Just like I showed in previous videos, you just keep it really simple, and we could even use this as a device to make her come forward a little bit. So I could see shadows also here on this side of the seashell. I just add them in very, very simply. Very simply and very loosely. And once I'm done with that, I can move on to the next shadow, which, if you haven't guessed, is the water around her. So you see I'm going from one part to the other part. But I'm not staying in one area too long. I'm just doing enough that I can, just to show where the main shadows are, that's all. So now I'm going to start adding the shadow on the water itself. And you can see it's a really deep, dark color. So I'm just going to go around wherever I see it which is in pretty much a fair quantity around the painting. And you can see it's already making the seashell pop out more. So just like any other painting, you just want to keep it simple and go around and add all the large areas first. This again is what we call blocking in painting. So try to avoid detail for as long as possible. And you can see she's already pretty much like popping out from the background. And I just want to go around and paint all that in pretty loosely again. Just want to let go a little bit. And this is a fairly large painting, so you want to put your body into it and just go around. And if you do feel exhausted, that is exactly what's going to happen on a large painting. So it's just normal to be a little tired after painting such a large painting and blocking it in. If any of you have ever done a mural, that takes also a lot of strength, a lot of stamina to create. So this is not exactly a mural, of course, it's not that size, but it is a large painting, so it does take a little bit more stamina. So as you can see, I'm going around and creating shadows, so you can see like most of the shadows are put in. Not all of them, of course, but some of them. At least we get a sense of depth right now and volume. So now I'm mixing the shadow for Venus's hair, and so I'm taking this rich cadmium red and a little black, because I want a very rich, deep color. And just a little bit of yellow, just to create a golden color. And you can see how rich and beautiful that is, and very deep. And that's exactly what I want. I want a deep, rich color for her hair, so her hair flows. And I'm keeping it fairly opaque, just to give it some power. So now I'm going to paint in the shadows on her hair, and this is going to make her flesh tone a little bit, stand out a little bit more in contrast. So remember the law of contrast, that you have dark and you have light, and it's going to pull your figure out from the background. So as you can see, it's already happening, and she's becoming a bit more three-dimensional. And you just want to go around. I can see shadow here, and I know that these shadows are just almost as dark as her shadow on her skin tone. So I'm putting less pressure on the brush just to create a softening effect. So you can still go around just anywhere, but I'm still keeping it really simple. And I can see shadow here as well on the bottom, and just going to really simply add that. So the same thing can be said for the figure on the right side. So just going to paint in the shadows of her hair. Again, almost the same tone as Venus's hair. I had a little bit more red. But I'm going around and just putting that in very loosely, as you can see. The intention is just to go around as much as you can. So now, same thing can be said on the left-hand side. So I'm just going to block in as much as I can, including the wing of the figures on the left-hand side. So you see, I'm trying to cover in as much area as possible. This is why we call it blocking in. You are putting in as much information as possible in the broadest manner possible. So you can see it's already starting to turn and have more volume. And of course now we're just going to add some shadows on the figures themselves to give them more volume, and I can see shadows everywhere basically, and especially on these beautiful figures on the left hand side. So I'm just gonna, again, just show, this is just to show light source. So later on I could start putting in wonderful detail, but for now, this is just to show where light's coming from. And you can see I'm keeping it very, very simple. And also the color of their garments, which is a bluish green color. Now, in art, colors fade over time, so apparently this painting was probably even brighter and more colorful when Botticelli painted it. And some details may have also been lost over time because of age, which is a shame, but this happens in art. It happens in painting, especially because the chemicals age over time, and colors fade. But we still have a very vivid, bright painting of Botticelli. And again, if anyone ever gets a chance to go to Florence, it's just a treat to see them there. It's quite beautiful. So one of the last things I do for blocking in is going back to this beautiful greenish blue water and painting in any areas, as you can see on the left side, that have not been painted in yet, which has the area next to their feet. So we're just gonna, and you could hear the sound of the canvas as I push the paint in. So as I said before, these brushes are made for punishment, and you do want to push the paint into the canvas because of the weave of the canvas, meaning that there's a texture on the canvas and you're pushing the paint into the texture. So again, as I said, it is physical, so you're just pushing it in until you get the paint off the brush. So the object is to cover as much area as possible in the beginning. So now we return to the figure on the right side, and I'm just going to put in basic shadows on her skin tone. And I'm just going to do that fairly fast. And it's one of the last stages of the blocking in stage, as we're getting closer to smaller things in our painting. So I'm just going to go around and paint in part of her foot as well. So now we could also put in the color of the background right behind her, and that's going to pull her forward and make the background recede in the distance, as it should. Since these are woods in the background, they're going to be what goes back in space. So we want those blocked in so that when we do detail, we don't question. We just have everything laid out or mapped up or mapped for us when we do detail. Very loosely, you see? I'm still keeping it very loose, very free. And lastly, I'm just going to put in these beautiful tree trunks in the back. Any information that I can, I will put in. And I could even put in part of the shadow on trees in the back, which are a fairly dark color behind our figure. So red and green are complementary colors. So I have a green background and she has reddish hair. So that's, in complementary terms, that's pushing her forward. So you can see we have most of the painting blocked in, and soon we're ready for the third and final stage as we start adding beautiful details to Botticelli's Birth of Venus as we copy it. Well, I hope you enjoyed that video from Bassman Studio. And remember, this is a three-part video. So in the last part, which should be coming up very soon, we're going to start adding all the wonderful detail in Botticelli's Birth of Venus. So that should be a lot of fun. Again, any questions or comments you may have, please leave them in the comment section. And for those who have subscribed to my channel, I thank you very much for supporting my channel. And for those who have not subscribed, please subscribe to my channel to see more videos coming up very soon from Bassman Studio. So remember, keep painting, keep creating, and don't be afraid to express yourself artistically. And I'll see you next time on Bassman Studio. Have an amazing day, everyone.